All right, Commissioner Cook, we're going to go ahead and start.
All right.
Commissioner Cook, we're going to go ahead and start.
All right. Okay.
Commissioner Cook, we're going to go ahead and start.
Looks like we are live on YouTube. Okay, well, that's the fourth time we are live on YouTube.
Commissioner Cook, hold up. We're getting lots of feedback on your end. You're going to have to turn your computer speakers off.
If that's better.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we are on YouTube. We have 16 participants on right now, and we will call this meeting to order finally for special meeting for discussion only on Ben Franklin Health District, Franklin County application. We have Commissioner Peck and Cook remote. Looks like Commissioner Didier is in the office, and we have Keith in the, Commission boardroom. So with that, our agenda shows a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would join me, I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America, and to the republic which stands one nation
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
Looks like our live streaming is behind just a little bit, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, quick question, point of order.
Correct. Go ahead.
I just want to ensure that we all received the same guidance, which was that this would be a phone-in remote meeting, not an in-person meeting, and that there wouldn't be public physical participation to comply with our own county resolution and the state guidelines. Do I understand that correctly, that we all got the same guidance?
Yes, we did.
All right, thank you.
I never received that guidance.
It's been since the governor did it, 2 months ago. So no, there's supposed to be no in-person meetings.
Well, we've been
our
having
prosecuting attorney's office authorized that just a short while ago. So.
And I believe the email from staff yesterday from Karen was that this would be a phone-in meeting.
Yeah.
Just want the public to know why the other commissioners are not present. The agreement was that it'd be a remote meeting.
No one asked me.
So we, as I said, we are here to discuss and hopefully approve our Benton Franklin Health District, Franklin County application to move the county forward to phase 2. Open for discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have quite a few questions here to ask. Of course, I was handed this document yesterday before our Board of Health meeting. Didn't have time to go through it and review it like I have now. And I have questions here that under this agreement, we are going to be hiring 30 more full-time employees for the health department, along with 14 volunteers. And then they have 25 that they're going to pull out of their facility, which takes it to a grand total of 69 people for case investigation and contact tracing. Now, that lies a problem because we're in this situation because our legislature under RCW 43.06.220 with the threat of gun legislation gave this governor this amount of authority to shut us down like he has. Now, I'm looking at this as a taking of more civil liberties by our constituents in Franklin County for some businesses to open up. I want the businesses to open up. But I am not in favor of taking more civil liberties from our people in this contact tracing, with more people being hired. Talk to some of the big employers around here right now, because it says in this booklet that 86% of the infections is in the Hispanic population. That means agricultural workers. So we're going to be seeing contact tracing. If somebody comes down with the COVID-19, they're going to find out who they've been around with for the last 24 hours, and then they're all going to be isolated. The people I talked to today said if they are isolated for 14 days, they are not getting paid. They are not going to be getting paid, and they probably won't have their job when they come back. This is an infringement on our civil liberties, and I think if we hesitantly pass this without finding the legal obligation to our civil liberties, we'd be doing an injustice to the people of Franklin County.
Further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would invite our legal counsel to comment on the remarks by Mr. Didier.
Jen or Sean, did you hear the question?
This is Sean. I'm on the line. Is there a particular question or aspect on that, Commissioner Peck, of what you'd like further input on?
Well, the assertion is that it's an infringement on our civil liberties, and we could probably debate at length which is the greater infringement, the current lockdown or phase 2. And I think we've all, I won't speak for others, I'm of the belief that RCW 4306-220 is duly enacted by the legislature, and therefore the governor is acting within the law. I don't like the law. I don't like the authority that's been given, but I don't see it as unlawful conduct that we can ignore. And so I think the question that was implied but not really stated was whether or not going to phase 2 represents an unlawful infringement on individual civil liberties in Franklin County.
Well, I think the question that the commissioners have before you is deciding whether to take action that is going to lead to being eligible to advance to phase 2. If that question, there was underlying questions in there about individuals losing their jobs, and I guess I would take issue with that. I think it's been well stated previously that COVID-19 would constitute an eligible leave under FMLA, under all the regulations surrounding FMLA. If you're eligible for FMLA, you'd be entitled to keep your job, and there's certain leave provisions that are available for that. So I guess the question really, as I understand it before the board, is, as probably many other decisions that come before the board, is this is a policy decision, whether or not the actions, consequences of such actions, merits and warrants proceeding forward to better the life or situation of our citizens. And that is the importance, I think, that is before the board. I mean, if we've given a previous legal analysis as to the constitutionality and or legal authority of the governor to take actions that he has done. And I think everybody agrees that we could have disagreement with how that process will take place or what restrictions may be imposed. And I recognize there's litigation surrounding that, but our opinion has been that once a state of emergency has been declared, the governor has very broad authorities given to him by the legislature to be able to deal with the emergency, and a process has been outlined of how to get counties out of the restrictions and proceed forward. Many counties are moving into phase 3 based on eligibility. It would be our legal opinion that it would be difficult to challenge this as an arbitrary and capricious action, since other counties that are eligible that still meet the safety and the threat presented by COVID-19, the opportunity to be able to move forward and reduce those restrictions and enable businesses to return, I guess, in somewhat of a usual fashion. So I guess that is really what's before the board without going into, I guess, further legal discussion. There's always going to be some give and take moving forward, especially through this kind of process. And that's something that the board is going to have to decide on, whether or not what has been outlined to move forward and to enable businesses to return in our county, if that is something that the board is willing to do and in the best interest of the county, that's something that will be left for the board to decide.
Well, Mr. Chairman, 30 full-time employees, FTEs, are going to be hired by the health department. And like I said, there's 14 volunteers plus 25 from the health board organization already. These 30 full-time employees, there's no time set forth for their employment. How long will they be employed? Where are the resources coming from to pay them? Is this full pay with benefits? Are these going to be permanent employees of the health department? These are all questions. Of course, with the legality of the civil liberties, when you're allowing people, and I remind, and I want to emphasize this, I've asked this question twice in the health board meetings. What is the accuracy of your test? 63% was the answer I was given both times. And when I was in high school, that was failing. Now, we're basing all this off of accuracy of a test of 63%. We're going to test people. If they test positive, which again, 63% of a positive test is not very high, they're going to find out where that person's been with this tracing. All the people they've interacted with have to be quarantined for 14 days. Do you see, or can you envision what this is going to do to the labor force here in Franklin County?
Further discussion?
So, Mr. Chairman, while I concur with the concerns about infringing on the civil liberties of our citizens, I don't concur with the underlying theses presented for opposing or appearing to oppose phase 2. I think the greatest thing that we can do in the long term to restore civil liberties is to get us through and past this COVID mess. And I don't see stubbornly remaining in phase 1, if we were to do that, as advancing efforts to get us through this and restore civil liberties. Getting to phase 2, uncomfortable, as inconvenient as it might be in some respects, appears to be a necessary step to move us forward. As for the employees, my understanding is the funding for that is from the state, and that those are not permanent employees, but no one has given us a date certain that that employment would end, because they don't obviously know how long this current situation is going to run. Mr. Johnson, I would invite you to confirm what I just said about the funding from the state. Do I have that correct?
In terms of funding for these employees, yes, Commissioner, that would be included as an eligible expense under our CARES Act funding that we received that came through the Department of Commerce at the state level from Congress. It's federal money that was allocated to the states, and the states then allocated it to local governments. And in my discussions with the staff at the Benton Franklin Health District, my recollection is that these are not intended to be permanent, long-time employees. but will be employed as long as necessary to deal with the contact tracing and testing needs of the Benton Franklin Health District. But funding for those positions comes from that CARES Act funding that we have been allocated.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, my perception is that our chances of getting approved by the Washington State Department of Health to go to phase 3 or phase 4 is exactly 0. That leaves us with a choice between take no action and remain in phase 1, or take action and apply for phase 2, recognizing that it's not perfect, but believing that it's better than the current phase 1. That's my assessment. If someone sees another option or another path or has another recommendation, I'm happy to hear it.
Now, I fully agree with that path forward because, you know, as everybody else, I'm not the only one that my emails are plumb full of people wanting to get into at least phase 2. If we can't get out of phase 1, we're just stymied and nothing will go forward. It's our legislators that gave the governor this horsepower, so to speak, to you know, put his thumb down on everything. So as far as I'm concerned, we need to pass this application and carry on trying to get on to phase 2.
Well, Mr. Chairman, with that, I would like to say that, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'd like to add to that you're exactly right. Our legislature did give the governor this authority to put his thumb down on us. But now in turn, we're giving that same authority in our county to the health district by means of this state secretary of health that is his appointee, and the health department works for him. Works for us supposedly, but working in conjunction with him, we're now giving the health department that authority for the residents of Franklin County to put their thumb on us.
State health authority.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman,
can I address a couple items?
Is that Mr. Sant? If so, let me just say that once again, I would invite anyone who's got a more productive recommendation than going to phase 2. It's one thing to critique phase 2 and to criticize the process and to beat up on the governor. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in finding the best, quickest path forward for our county. And if someone's got a recommendation that does that better than phase 2, rather than go back and forth on the merits of whether or not the health department should or shouldn't have this authority, I want to get us through this and get people back to work and get businesses open. Phase 2 appears to be the best way. So once again, for the last time, I'm going to ask if somebody has a better specific recommendation, which would include do nothing, stay in phase 1, apply for phase 3, whatever it might be. If there's a better recommendation, I'd like to hear it. Otherwise, I'll be back in a minute with a motion to approve.
I would like to see the 30 full-time employees and the case investigation and contact tracing strike from this, and I'll be willing to vote for it as long as we take that out.
Well, I can't agree with that. So we need to carry forward and get this COVID-19 over with, not just patch it up.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman.
I would observe that if we were to follow that recommendation, and I understand the purpose behind it, and frankly, I would like to have those things removed as well. But the simple reality is if we do that, this then has to go back for another Board of Health meeting. It has to be approved by the health officer. And then it's got to be approved by all 6 Board of Health directors. Then it's got to come back to us to vote again. And I think that represents an additional delay that might give us a better product, but given that I believe time is of the essence and people need to get back to work today, not 3 weeks from now, I think we need to stick with the current proposal before us. And Mr. Sant, I apologize. It sounds like I may have stepped on you when you started speaking. So if you had something to add, please do so.
I was just going to add the concern. I recognize Commissioner Didier's concern on the contact tracing. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that really contact tracing is not a new feature, so to speak. In other words, there have been outbreaks of E. coli or other health concerns and outbreaks, and they utilize their best efforts for contact tracing to make sure people could identify and try to track down the source of those kind of health concerns and health issues. While I recognize the concern by adding the personnel to the health department, it is also the understanding that they did so because that is what it was deemed reasonably necessary under the COVID outbreak to be able to meet the guidelines that have been outlined by the governor and also to facilitate their role of protecting this particular health emergency. I'm not weighing in on the merits of the governor's claims or anything like that. I just want the board to be aware that this is not really creating any kind of new authority or legislation. This is legislation that has been in existence for some time that grants the health department. Again, these are laws that were passed by the legislature and has been approved into law that grants the health department these authorities and power under these type of scenarios. And again, if there's a concern about that, that should be something that should be, I guess, raised with the appropriate legislative authorities. I just want the board to understand that this is, my understanding is that this is nothing new. These are existing laws that are in place under states of emergency. And when it's a state of emergency based on a health issue, the health department does have that authority granted to them to take appropriate action as they deem necessary. So I just wanted the board to have that little bit of peace so that there's an understanding. This is not some newly created power. These are powers that have existed, but I recognize they have not been utilized quite to this extent that I am aware of. But we do have quite a bit of legal authority that goes back to the Mount St. Helens eruption that does address a lot of the issues that people have, which is the restrictions that are put in place to deal with states of emergency. I just wanted the board to have that additional piece.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the board's consideration of moving the phase 2 application to the state. So I move for approval.
Is there a second? I will second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, as the maker of the motion, I'll speak first. While I share the concerns for individual liberty, I think the best interest of our citizens is to move us through this process as quickly as possible. And I don't think that our small businesses, frankly, can withstand additional delays in moving forward and getting open and getting back to business. Time is of the essence. I don't believe that a watered down phase 2 would get favorable consideration at the state. I'm not even convinced that the application we're submitting now with all of the things that are included, I'm not even certain that it will get approved. But I'm wanting to move this forward as quickly as possible and get people back to work as quickly as possible. And I think this is the best option in a situation where there are no really great options.
Mr. Chairman, talked to the coroner this morning, and he has only 9 listed COVID deaths. Of course, he doesn't go into the hospitals, but we're up to 17 for Franklin County. We have more responsibilities that are listed here, and I'm not going to go through them, for the health department and for the Columbia Basin Health Association. it says here, testing will be provided to all employees regardless of insurance status or ability to pay. Laboratory reports will be received directly from the lab by Columbia Basin Health Association, and then they got to get it to the Board of Health. There's a lot more here written of their, in fact, there's 3 pages of it, and I'm not going to go through it, but they're giving a lot of power to our health board. Now, we have Antifa in Seattle that just took over a precinct and has labeled it that if you enter, you're leaving America. They're destroying Seattle right now in our state, the Antifa. And we here in Franklin County are trying to abide by this COVID-19 restrictions. Now, I would encourage the businesses to have a peaceful protest and open their business. Now, they would be taking the responsibility of renewing their license. But in Franklin County, we should ask every business to take that peaceful protest and open their business. Yes, we're encouraging them to violate the governor's law that has been unjustly thrown down on us by a legislature that compromised us because our guns were on the table. And now we're doing the same to our public here in Franklin County with the threat of businesses, not all, but a few will get to open. Why not all? If we're going to go to this extreme, why not all businesses open? Again, we are the government of Franklin County, and now we're picking and choosing what businesses open. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, my fellow commissioners just clearly advocated for citizens to openly violate a law that we've received legal counsel is in fact, a duly adopted law by the legislature and the governor. That's my first point, and I can't concur with advocating that people violate duly constituted laws. Find that remarkable. And I'm also mindful that we are the Board of Health. When Commissioner Didier talks about us giving too much power to the Franklin Health District, he appears to forget that the Board of Directors for the Benton Franklin Health District is himself and you and me and the 3 commissioners from Benton County. If the concern truly is giving too much power to the health district, then the 6 of us, 3 from Benton, 3 from Franklin, will be ideally positioned to address that should that come to pass. So I don't think that is a concern.
So with that, I'm going to call the question. We have a motion and a second on the board for Benton Franklin Health District, Franklin County application to forward to the state health board to forward us to phase 2. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So noted. With that, we will ask Mr. Johnson if he would finish up that application for us and get it over to the state ASAP, and hopefully we'll have some answers shortly.
Certainly, Commissioner, I'll get that sent today.
All right. And that's all the business we have for a special meeting. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.